do we start? I know that some of you may interpret this editorial and declare us crazies. And then of course there'll be others who conclude that we have already well illustrated our stance on the current debate on COVID, on vaccines and just about everything else in between. But you shouldn't be too quick to judge. That's what we're asking you to do in this editorial. It says, I think, more about independent thought than truth or reality. Now this is more about freedom to express a belief and importantly be able to do it with some conviction. And not to be ridiculed as a conspiracy theorist because of a difference of opinion. Which takes me now to the maverick politician in Canberra, Craig Kelly, who has been in the news over the last 48 hours. Yesterday, Kelly resigned from the Liberal Party to move to the crossbenches as an independent. Now by doing so, he showed the Prime Minister Scott Morrison how much of his own man he really is. Today, the federal government's control in the House sits on a knife edge. It now governs with the slimmest of majorities. This move by Craig Kelly takes the number of independents in the House to 7, and it creates a very much bigger headache for the Prime Minister than Craig Kelly's views on how COVID should be treated. Now, it is true, Kelly has become the unnecessary butt of public ridicule and derision. He's been abused because of his fight to have the government look into the legitimacy of 2 drugs, namely hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, to treat COVID. For Kelly, he says it's been all about saving lives and doing what he thinks needs to be done, and that is, he's long wanted a discussion, a debate into whether or not these 2 drugs can actually treat COVID. Now remember, whether you actually agree or disagree with this maverick Craig Kelly, we believe he has every right to raise the discussion without being written off and called a crazy conspiracy theorist. And just as Kelly believes in the use of these 2 particular drugs, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, it's also important to know that vaccines have already played a huge role in successfully combating diseases in the past. Diseases that raged around the world: measles, mumps, rubella, whooping cough, and of course polio, to name just a few. Contrary to how Kelly has been portrayed, he's no raving lunatic. He has demonstrated that he's a man of conviction. He actually stands for something. And there aren't that many people in politics who stand for anything these days, which is why Kelly should well be applauded. Now, since the very beginning of the pandemic, Craig Kelly has been one of the very few outspoken voices. He's advocated for the use of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin as a treatment. Now, his advocacy of ivermectin, according to Kelly, is because he believes, he really does, that it's a low-cost drug that has a proven record as a treatment for COVID. Kelly has been, in fact, spending some time sharing medical and peer-reviewed studies from right around the world from a number of leading medical journals to support his claims. He's spoken of 255 studies that have been conducted on the use of hydroxychloroquine. And he's also spoken about the other studies on ivermectin, 63 of them that have been conducted over that time. And there have been a number of other studies, 51 of them, on vitamin D and whether it works or not. Now, he's never claimed to be a doctor, but he believes that doctors should be free to determine the best course of action for their patients without any government interference. Right or wrong, it's his belief, and he wishes to have the freedom to challenge the status quo. So why are Kelly's views offensive? Could it be that his narrative simply runs counter to that of the federal government and the pharmaceutical companies that hold such great sway and great influence? On the surface, it seems both drugs may impact on the earnings of Big Pharma and the money that it derives from the production and sale of their vaccines. Now, if Kelly is right, and hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin do work then why can't they be used as complementary treatments to the vaccines? Kelly's resignation, there's no doubt about it, blindsided the Prime Minister Scott Morrison. But it should have come as no surprise to the PM that Craig Kelly would not tolerate being bullied, nor would he allow himself to be belittled by Labor's Tanya Plibersek. Morrison's lack of understanding and lack of loyalty to his man, and taking the stance to side with the opposition, was the absolute last straw for Kelly. Morrison should have understood that Kelly's conviction and the freedom to express his views that are neither politically based nor racist is what motivated Craig Kelly, the politician, to move to become an independent voice. Trying to rein him in was the strategy that backfired and what caused the problems. Publicly rebuking Kelly because he sought to open a discussion on the two drugs that have proven to be safe for the past 65 years was really odd. Kelly hasn't been, as I said earlier, a problem child in that he wasn't a racist, nor did he express anti-nationalist views, homophobia, nor has he supported terrorist groups. Instead, what he wanted and called for was a debate on why the medical fraternity isn't using or accessing hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin to treat COVID. It's a fair call by Kelly. So why aren't we having the debate? If there are major global scientific research studies showing the effectiveness of both drugs, then a debate should be had. However, what we've seen over the past few days is that rather than adopt an open mind, people like Craig Kelly have been howled down and accused of spreading misinformation. I think the truth is that people like Craig Kelly are being demonised for their eagerness to explore an alternative that may or may not be real, but they have been cast as ill-informed and irresponsible, and we need to address that. What we have seen during COVID is a real restriction of freedom to express any thought, and it seems that anyone with a different view is simply fair game for abuse. What Craig Kelly has exposed is a new culture in Australia that is very un-Australian. Government agencies have signed off on COVID vaccinations. The current evidence states that they're safe. And remember, travelling overseas will require a vaccination. I well understand that the world keeps changing, but in 2021 and beyond, we must make sure that free speech and the right to choose remain the very bedrock of our democracy.